Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... This weekend, not only am I reviewing a book that I absolutely loved, but my best friend Connie has returned as a guest because we buddy read this weekend's title together, which you might remember her from when we last reviewed We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. If not, I have provided a link for that video in the description section of this episode, so be sure to check that out. Now, over the last few weeks, I have been dying to review my best friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, but I wanted to hold off on this until Connie could sit down and review it with me, because there were quite a few times throughout this read where we both became deeply touched, and I just really wanted to wait for her so we could discuss this together and just have a great time talking about it. So, without further ado, let's welcome back Connie and see what's been new with her.
Hi! I'm so glad to be back and ready to dive into my best friend's Exorcism and getting back into the 80s!
Yes.
I love the 80s. At the moment, it's just been busy at work. It's been crazy. Busy at home, getting ready for spring and stuff. I've been watching a lot of cool stuff on Netflix. Some true crime documentaries, things like that. And that's pretty much been what's new with me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Also, before we get started, we would like to say thank you to Bryce Kirkham for recommending my best friend's Exorcism. So Bryce, if you're watching, we hope that you're doing well and you enjoy this review. But with that said, let's rewind to the 80s. And now that we've gone back in time, let's see what kind of hellfire the Satanic Panic scared up. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix is about a woman by the name of Abby who has discovered that the priest who helped her as a teenager has died. From here, we rewind to 1982, where she's reflecting on the time when she was 10 years old and she had planned to impress her classmates by skating at her birthday party.
However, due to a classmate sabotaging Abby's party, the only person who goes to Abby's party is a girl named Gretchen. Although these two girls had never interacted before, this moment sparks a lifetime friendship.
But years later, on Labor Day weekend, their friendship is put to the test when Abby and Gretchen decide to try acid with their circle of friends. Then, hours later, things go horribly wrong as Gretchen wanders off, and come the next morning, she's found wandering from an abandoned blockhouse in the woods.
After that, Gretchen's life gets turned upside down and she starts becoming tormented by unseen hands and disembodied voices. Then, as Gretchen starts becoming an entirely different person, hell-bent on discord, Abby realizes that when Gretchen's summoned out of the blockhouse, she carries something ancient within her.
And while that ancient being decides to use Gretchen's body as its permanent residence, Abby will stop at nothing to save her best friend.
In an interview conducted by Nicholas Yates in Sci-Fi Pulse, Grady Hendrix said that the title of My Best Friend's Exorcism came first, then came the story. Character-wise, Hendrix explained that much of the exorcism subgenre focuses on a demon testing the faith of a priest. For that reason, the possessed person acts as a secondary character. So when creating My Best Friend's Exorcism, Hendrix wanted to focus on what the possessed person experienced. Concept-wise, Hendrix noted he doesn't think religious faith is as powerful now as what it had been. By considering this, he focused on the powers of friendship, which he felt is something that most people could strongly invest their beliefs. And since high school friends tend to have the strongest of friendships, he knew the characters had to be of high school age. And the high school experience he was most familiar with was the one he experienced in the 80s.
Fun facts. Since My Best Friend's Exorcism utilizes an actual demon as Gretchen's possessor, here's a few things you might not know about that demon. Andres is a Grand Marquis of Hell who rules over 30 legions. Among them, their only goal is to hunt and kill men. Due to his powers of creating discord, allegedly he had been summoned by military leaders to incite wars that last for decades. Among the spirits of the Ars Goetia, Andres is the most violent, and when summoning him, conjurers must stay in a protective circle or else they will die at his hands. Yet upon conjuring Andres, he will gladly kill whoever the invoker desires. Drawings depict Andres as a humanoid with angel wings and the head of an owl, and with his humanoid-like body, he holds a sword and rides a black wolf. Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoilers section of this video, which, if you haven't read this book before, we're about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. So if you wish to click away, scroll down to the comments section, and you'll see that I have a pinned comment at the top. If you click on the timestamp within that comment, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so...
Ready, set, go!
Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, we would like to talk about a few of our favorite moments. Which, the first one that comes to mind is when Abby encounters the abandoned blockhouse in the woods. Now, prior to this, Abby and Gretchen had tried drugs with their friends. Then, a few hours later, they decide to go skinny dipping in the creek out back. But when Gretchen accidentally dives into some shallow water and doesn't resurface, their fun evening becomes serious. From here, they start to search for Gretchen, and she eventually emerges from the creek and wanders off into the woods, where Abby ends up chasing after her, and this is when she encounters the abandoned blockhouse in the woods, which, when she encounters this landmark, she discovers there's this swirling black mass in one of the windows. Also, a man's voice calls out to her, and when Abby decides to haul ass, she gets the sensation that someone's following her, but when she turns around, there's nothing there. So, I really enjoyed this scene because I'm a sucker for the whole bad place scenario, because I think it really just adds another level of creepy character to the story.
It does.
And also, this place in particular reminded me of this abandoned house that my friends and I used to dare each other to go into. So with what Abby was feeling, I was able to somewhat relive those emotions. And I also really think this is an awesome scene that shows that less is more. Because even though we never see a full-figured demon, by the vibes that the house is giving off, we just understand this is the kind of place that you don't want to visit in the daytime, much less at night.
Yeah, it ain't good. The moment I most decided to talk about is that three-way call between Abby, Margaret, and Glee. Now, at this point, Abby is going to start getting suspicious that Margaret's boyfriend raped Gretchen. So she decides to find out one way or the other and decides to call Glee. Now, she calls Glee up and casually starts talking to her. Hey, did you see anybody there that weekend? Anybody else there? Before it goes any further, Glee says, hold on a moment. When she comes back, Abby starts talking to her, lays it all out, gives her the whole spiel about her suspicions about how Margaret's boyfriend had hurt and raped Gretchen. Now, at this point, Margaret chimes in and starts threatening and yelling at Abby because Glee's little full self did a three-way call and she was listening in to everything. This moment really stood out to me because you knew who Margaret and what Margaret was. You knew she was an awful person. You knew that from the very beginning. But I never suspected that Glee was, that she was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I never suspected it. Abby went to her because anybody could see who had eyes and ears that Gretchen needed help. Gretchen was in trouble. She went to her. Instead of helping her and being there as a friend and helping Gretchen, she betrayed her and did that three-way call. Now, what happens to Glee is bad and messed up, but Glee never redeems herself. Ever.
No, she remains a twat.
She remains it.
My next favorite moment is Margaret's worm removal. Now, prior to this, Gretchen had been giving Margaret these miracle shakes to help her lose weight. And the thing is, the shakes actually work. But at the same time, Margaret becomes bedridden because she's become malnourished and underweight. Well, one day, Abby decides to go visit Margaret, and this is when she discovers that Margaret has been reduced to nothing more than skin and bones, and she has this large mound in her stomach that makes her look pregnant. So Abby is like trying to feed her this ice cream and everything, and that's when this worm just uncurls from inside Margaret's stomach and emerges from her mouth. Then, after we have some struggle, they go to the doctor, and we discover that Margaret actually had 23 feet of tapeworm inside of her because she had been eating tapeworm eggs. So what's really disturbing about this is, back in the day, Victorians actually had a diet that was like the tapeworm diet, so they could lose weight and eat whatever they wanted. So due to that fact, this kind of makes the moment even more disturbing. But what I really appreciated about this is, since the beginning of the book, I wanted Margaret to have her ass handed to her because she's such a horrible character.
Yep.
But then when it finally happens, like, I really felt sorry for her.
I know.
Which, it's rare for me to feel sorry for an antagonist, so
Right.
major kudos to Hendrix for making me feel this way.
Right. My next favorite moment is when Chris leaves Abby alone during the exorcism. But before that, they kidnap Gretchen and take her to her beach house. Once there, they tie Gretchen to the bed and begin to exorcise Andres. Then Chris's methods start to become torture. He starts out throwing salt in Gretchen's face. He even begins force-feeding her vinegar, and then he starts funneling boiling hot water into her. He quickly realizes he's in over his head, and he goes to tell Abby he's going to go get his dad. But he never returns. I still can't believe Chris left Abby alone, knowing how dangerous the situation was. He left a 17-year-old girl there with a powerful demon, not knowing what she was doing. Abby had no experience exorcising no demon. She didn't know what to do, what she was doing, nothing. All she knew is that she was needed to save her friend.
That would be our luck.
I know. But then maybe Chris was being tempted too much by the demon to do all these awful things, and he realized it, and he needed to get out of the house before things got worse. But he still should have sent his dad to help.
But he does redeem himself.
He redeemed himself. At the end, he showed up at court. He took the full blame for everything that had happened and got Abby off the hook. And he ended up getting released himself at the end. And I liked at the end how they met up and talked, and they had both moved on.
And they were cool and
They were
everything.
cool.
Yeah.
It was good.
The final moment I would like to talk about is a shared favorite moment between Connie and myself. Which, this is when Abby is exorcising the demon from Gretchen.
Yeah.
And what happens here is she starts off by praying to Saint Michael, but that honestly does nothing more than just make a flood of cockroaches come out of Gretchen's mouth, and these bloodworms start to come out of her tear ducts. Then, as she continues to pray, Andres does start to leave Gretchen's body, but he's doing so by coming out of her mouth, and it's causing this major damage where it's about to kill Gretchen. So, in order for there to be no more damage done, Abby stops praying, and of course, Andres goes back inside. However, Abby starts to sing We Got the Beat, which is the song that she and Gretchen had bonded over. And this is when she realizes that in order to save her friend, she has to invoke the power of their friendship. So she starts to list off all of these things that they have in common, and due to her determination and her love, she's able to invoke that friendship power and save her friend while sending Andres back to hell. Now, this is perhaps the most powerful exorcism I had ever encountered, even more so than the one in The Exorcist. And I say that because with religious faith, it brought them half of the way, but what went on and saved the day was invoking the power of their friendship.
Right.
And by how this was done, it felt more emotional and personal.
Yeah.
And I honestly just sat there and ugly cried. Like, I was sniveling like a baby. And the moment is so beautiful and so touching. I wish I had the correct words to really describe it, but words escape me.
I agree. Its description was so spot on. I could feel the emotions coming off the page. I could feel it, and I almost teared up as well. Because although Abby didn't know much, she didn't know much about exorcisms. She knew how much she loved Gretchen and how much their friendship meant to both of them.
Yes, and it was beautiful.
Beautiful.
We would like to use this opportunity to bitch about a few characters, which at the tip of this iceberg is Gretchen's asshole parents. Now, the first time that they pissed me off was when Gretchen's mama got Abby that children's New Testament for her birthday, rather than the E.T. toy that she wanted. Now, personally, if they wanted to get her something religious, I think what they should have done was just gotten her that damned E.T. toy and thrown in a few Watchtower pamphlets or some shit. But, anywho, the moment that really made me want to slap the bejesus out of these dipshits was when Abby had gone to them and confessed to them everything that happened on Labor Day weekend, and she even mentioned that she was afraid Gretchen had been raped.
Yes.
Well, these two dildos, they don't care nothing about the rape. All they're worried about is the fact that they tried drugs. And, you know, if I was them, drugs would be the least of my worry, because if I found out that my daughter had been raped or had the possibility of being raped, I would be out there on the street trying to find someone to castrate with the switchblade that I keep under my left titty.
Yes. Well, I would like to talk about those two little friends, Margaret and Glee. They were no real friend to Abby or Gretchen. When crap hit the fan, they ran like Forrest Gump. They are no ride or die friends at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Even when Gretchen went missing in the woods, Glee and Margaret weren't worried. It was Abby who actually went looking for her in the woods, who was actually concerned about her, who was actually worried. And when they started noticing something was wrong with Gretchen, Glee and Margaret was like, bye. They ditched and ran. They weren't concerned. She was an embarrassment to them at that point.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia. And Abby went to them for help. They even called Glee and did that 3-way phone call, and they turned it all around on her. But when Gretchen reemerged all healed and all better, they wanted to be her friend again then.
Yeah, she could come eat with them again.
Yeah, because she was all pretty and good again.
We knew assholes like that.
I know. Now, I think some of it could be attributed to the demon trying to cause discord with them, but I honestly think that was just who Margaret and Glee were to their core, and the demon knew that, and he fed on it.
When you're trash, you're trash.
Yeah.
My Best Friend's Exorcism provided some great characters while it presented some very important topics, which among these topics the most important was the power of friendship. But it also commented on 80s pop culture, as well as focusing on the satanic panic, the war on drugs, the AIDS epidemic, and sex in general. Now, character-wise, the characters in this book were phenomenal.
Yes.
There were times where my heart actually broke for the right characters.
Yeah.
And then for other characters, they made my blood boil because they were such assholes.
Yeah.
And I think the way that this came about is Hendrix really provided us with characters that were relatable and realistic.
Yeah.
There were quite a few times where I was like, wow, I know that person.
Right.
Also, before getting into this book, I was not ready to become this emotionally invested with Abby and Gretchen, but I did, and it was in a quick amount of time that I was able to become invested in this way.
I agree. I mean, it captures bullying in a sense, as Abby is essentially bullied. It captures abuse, drug abuse, a possible rape. And it captures the 80s and the feel of the 80s perfectly, which won me over because I love the 80s. And like you said, the characters really are relatable. You can say, I went to high school with them.
Yes.
I went to high school with them, and I totally feel you about Gretchen and Abby. They are my people. They're my people.
Yes. Theme-wise, I believe the strongest question this book presents is how far would you go for your best friend?
Yeah.
Then after it asks that question, it presents an example of how powerful a friendship can be.
Yeah.
Which I honestly believe that Gretchen and Abby are the perfect example of a loyal friendship.
Yes.
And it's to the point that not even demons can tear them apart. Which, I mean, of course, they do have their moments where there's hiccups in the relationship, and that's normal.
It is.
But the important thing is they always come back together and they see it through. And in the end, I honestly believe that with Abby and her loyalty, not only to Gretchen, but also Margaret and Glee, this helps elevate her to a higher level of being where she's all around just a good person.
Yeah. That's a central question to me as well, and I would kill one for you.
Oh, thank you. I got a list.
Oh, okay. Anytime. And I agree about Abby. If the phrase ride or die was in the dictionary, Abby's face would be there. I mean, look what she endured to help and save Gretchen and all her friends, Margaret and Glee too.
Yes.
Despite everything, she tried to help them.
Yeah. They did some horrible stuff to her, but she stuck it through.
She did. And the same can be said for Gretchen. I mean, despite the fact she was possessed, she tried to keep Abby at arm's length with the shunning, with the phone calls, with when Abby went to go see her in that English class and she was writing on the thing, "It's not me. It's not me." She was trying to help and protect Abby, even though the shunning part, yes, that was a little bit of the demon trying to keep control, but Abby tried to protect.
She still was able to break through. Yeah, that's a good point, because, I mean, the thing is, even at this point, the demon was paramount in her body. She was still trying to break through to warn Abby.
Yeah, Gretchen was trying to protect her through everything, even though she was the one who was possessed.
That's a good point. Now, among the topics that focus on the 80s, it seems like the two most important subjects that come into play is how the satanic panic and the war on drugs consumed all else during this time.
Yeah.
Which, a good example of this is how Gretchen's parents react to the whole Labor Day weekend revelation. Then we also have that spill in the high school auditorium about rape juice and everything. And even though it feels like this is a well-meaning lecture, it also seems like that the main objective of the speakers is honestly nothing more than trying to help kids save face and their virginity, and nothing else really matters in this aspect.
I agree. Her parents were more concerned about the drug use than actually helping her. And that lecture that you mentioned, it seemed that they were going with the message that it was put more responsibility was put more on the victim than the victim's attacker.
True. I noticed that too. And that's something that still happens today.
It is.
It's the whole idea, she shouldn't have drank that. She shouldn't have been wearing that.
She shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, the whole thing with that lecture was, it really felt like it was putting the responsibility on the victim rather than the rapist. Then, as far as the propaganda of the satanic panic goes, Hendrix gives us some great examples of some of the gossip that could have been floating around during this time. Like, at one point in the book, we have where Glee is talking about how a certain brand of toothpaste is satanic because of its logo. Then we also have another classmate who is just full of gossip and propaganda, and she's talking about how some D&D kid killed his mom because the game is satanic, and the list just continues on from there.
Yeah, there was a lot of urban legend propaganda in the shared dialogue, but I think Hendrix's best comment in regards to the fear of the satanic panic was by simply presenting a possession in that decade.
Oh, totally. Overall, my best friend's exorcism didn't scare me, but there were a few scenes where I was held in suspense and I felt my adrenaline pump. Plus, there was one or two moments where I was actually grossed out. But overall, I really felt like I was just very well touched by this story.
I agree. It really didn't scare me either, and I connected with it 100% right away with the characters, just the whole 80s vibe, everything.
Yes, absolutely.
I highly recommend My Best Friend's Exorcism because it has everything a reader can look for. It has love, friendship, betrayal, danger, great music, and more. It's also a great buddy read with someone.
Oh, I totally agree. I would highly recommend reading this with your best friend because it's a great bonding experience. And in all honesty, even though this is an awesome horror book, I'm still surprised that a book about demonic possession could make me cry. So, yeah, I highly recommend this. And this is also pretty cool because on Spotify, there's a soundtrack to this book. So be sure to check that out. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a horror book you would recommend that made you cry? Also, my second question is, if your best friend was possessed, what elements of your friendship would you invoke to exorcise that person's demon? Now, if Connie was possessed, I would compel her demon in the name of Mary Higgins Clark. Then, by the powers of Alanis Morissette and loom knitting, I would banish it. And if I really had to pull out the big guns here, I would call on the powers of Sex and the City and red wine and send that demon packing.
If I ever had to save Alex here from a demon, I would compel it in the name of Shirley Jackson and by the power of a jewel concert and loom knitting and banish it away.
Yes, yes.
And if it got real dicey, I will call on the power of the human centipede and our Tinkerbell and Peter Pan tattoos and send it packing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, I appreciate you coming back to review this book with me. I had a great time doing it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course,
I really enjoyed it.
And of course, I hope that you can come back again in the future.
Anytime.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Now that we have that covered, it's time to close out the video. But before I do, I'd like to say thank you to Lisa G as well as J.L. Mulvihill, which J.L. Mulvihill is a young adult fantasy steampunk author, and her books are available in print, ebook, and audio, and those are available wherever books are sold. Also, I would like to say thank you to Melody Romeo, which Melody Romeo is a historic fiction and fantasy author, and her books are available in print and ebook, and of course those are available wherever books are sold. And last but not least, I would like to say thank you to my mom and grandma. And if you're wondering why I'm giving a shout out to these wonderful people, it's because they've had the opportunity to contribute to my Patreon account, which if you would like to contribute as well, I have a link available in the description section of this video. And for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos. And if you have a certain profession you would like to have tied to your name, just let me know and I'll include that in my shout out. Also, I do have a $10 tier available, and this not only gives you the shout out at the end of my videos, but it also gives you one free photo at the beginning of every month, as I like to do creepy photography on the side. So once you receive that image, you can print it off, do whatever you like. So if you're able to do that, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. All I hope is that you return to this channel so we can continue to have a good time together. And if you haven't followed me on social media yet, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all available in the description section of this video. And if you've yet to subscribe, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.